Well, with all this cold weather, it can be easy to forget about the past summer's drought. But it's not very far from the minds of the scientists at the Iowa DNR. So get this. Iowa measures water years from October to September. And in the year we just ended, precipitation across the state was below normal. In fact, over the last 3 water years, Iowa's precipitation is almost 16 inches short of normal. Here to talk about this is the Iowa DNR Hydrology Resources Coordinator, Tim Hall. Tim, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me on. Glad to do it.
Okay, break this down for us. What does it mean when the state says we're 3 years below normal precipitation? I mean, what's the impact there?
The impact that we see is a cumulative year-over-year impact. When we started 2021, it was kind of dry, but we were okay because we had a lot of moisture. And then we had a dry year, and then we started 2022, and it was already dry to begin with. And the same thing this year. So the concern we have is that over time, if we start 2024 drier than normal, it's going to be even harder for us to make up any moisture deficits. So it's just a challenge when it's year over year over year, and 3 years in a row is a long time. In fact, I think right now we're going on 180 weeks of at least some drought designation in the state based on the U.S. Drought Monitor. And that's the longest stretch that we've ever seen since the inception of the U.S. Drought Monitor. So this is a very long-term drought, and it kind of chips away at the moisture in the state.
So we know this past October, was the first time since February in which Iowa's average precipitation was above normal. So, I mean, looking at this winter and predictions for spring of 2024, what do you think? Can the state's soil even recover by this summer, or are you still concerned?
Well, there's both concern and there's hope. So after a wet October, November turned out to be exceptionally dry. It's going to be, for some parts of the state, it was a top 10 driest November. We only had 0.4 of an inch of rain for the whole month of November. So we took the good news of October and we turned it around in November with some dry weather. The challenge we have is that during the months of December, January, and February, all together, those months usually only bring about 3¼ inches of moisture. If you compare that to May, June, and July, the 3 wettest months, May, June, and July, we usually see over 14 inches of rain. So it's hard to think about replenishing soil moisture during the winter, both because the ground's frozen and because we just don't get much moisture. But there's optimism for the spring because those are typically our wettest months. If we just have a normal spring season, we could see significant replenishment of soil moisture and sort of get ourselves dug out of the worst of the hole that we're in right now.
So, Tim, before I let you go, I mean, what's next for you guys at the DNR? How do you deal with these changing conditions? And I think more importantly, how do you prepare landowners and farmers for that?
That's a great question. We have a state drought plan that we just implemented within the last year. So we're using that to guide our decision making and discussions. In fact, we have meetings set up with multi-agencies this week to talk about what's going to happen in 2024 and how we can get ready. What we want to do is consistently communicate to communities and citizens what the conditions are so that folks can think ahead, plan ahead, think about how their water use is going to be impacted. We want to provide technical assistance to communities and water utilities wherever we can. We just want to stay in front of the issue. Unfortunately, we can't make rain, but we can try to help communities make the best decisions that they can for their citizens and their utilities. And that's really what we're trying to do, is get folks positioned to be in the best place they can.
Wow. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
We have been chatting with the Iowa DNR about the state's water. For the 3rd year in a row, Iowa has had less than normal precipitation. The Iowa Drought Team continues to closely monitor these conditions as we move through the winter, although typically drought conditions do not significantly change over the winter months.